Hello everyone, welcome to this month's Verto webinar. I can see there are still some people joining. So I'll start relatively slow, but I will start because in the interest of time, we want to be on time and definitely not run over. My name is Laura Watts. I am the marketing manager here at Verto. We're delighted to see so many of you registered for this webinar today. We know that the programme and project data standards are an important topic percolating right now, so I'll be discussing that in more detail alongside my expert panel, who I will introduce momentarily. But just before I do, please note that this webinar is being recorded. It will be available for you to re-watch, and I'll send and you can send to people that couldn't make the live session today after we finish. I will send that link out on an email to everybody who registered, and it will also sit on our website as well and be available from there. So I've also ensured that the Q&A is open. We'll leave time at the end for a few questions, but please do place any question that you have into the Q&A throughout the session so others can see those questions and maybe upvote them if there's anything they'd like to know more about. Right, so today's topic is all about getting really clear on the purpose and aims of government project delivery's programme and project data standards. These are being rolled out, and with that may come about some significant change in the way that departments currently work. So today we want to help fill in any knowledge gaps about those standards and clearly show the steps that departments can take to comply with them. So I'm just going to bring on my panel for today and introduce them. So I first of all want to introduce Pete Cox. He has been working in the central government public sector space for the last 14 years. He leads our work across central government and works very closely with departments navigating challenges and change in real time. He's played a key role in translating the standards into something more practical within Verto. He's helped organisations move towards alignment in a way that is structured, achievable and grounded in how delivery actually happens. So welcome, Pete. Thank you so much for being here today. Next up is Simon Hall. Simon is one of the original members of the Verto team and since 2011 has been working closely with our clients. He's dedicated to making sure the platform supports how each organisation actually works, shaping Verto around their processes rather than asking teams to adapt to the tool, which is really key to make implementation feel seamless and effective from day one. Now I forgot to bring my slides on, but we do have a few contact details for Pete here. If you'd like to take any of them down, I'll share these slides at the end. And then, of course, Simon as well. Now, finally, we are really delighted to have Ben Salisbury from Government Project Delivery, who will be taking us, we'll be talking to just ahead of the Q&A about the standards from the perspective of the team that has been in the forefront of their design. So we will welcome Ben onto the screen in just a bit. Right, do get your questions in for our speakers, but for now, let's begin our panel discussion. So Pete, I'm going to start with you, and because you are first, I'm afraid it's up to you to provide a little bit of context. So could you, for me, please explain who are Government Project Delivery, how do they sit within central government, and why does their work matter to project teams within central government organisations?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Laura, and good morning, everybody. So for those of you that don't know, Government Project Delivery sit within the National Infrastructure and Service Transformation Authority. They are essentially responsible for building the delivery capability and professional standards to help drive consistency and raise capability across project delivery in the UK government. They operate across all government departments, including arm's length bodies, ministerial departments, and everything in between, really. As I've already mentioned, driving the consistency for governance reporting, assurance and controls, and helping provide guidance to something we'll talk about in a little bit more detail around the government's functional standard GovS002 and the various areas for best practice and guidance embedded within that as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's really clear. And I understand that we were aware that these standards were being developed early on. Can you just tell me a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, sure. So it was actually another member of the civil service from another department. I was having a conversation with them, and they said, "Oh, have you seen the draft project data standards that have been published by what then was the Infrastructure and Projects Authority around April last year? So virtually 12 months ago to the day." I was naturally intrigued by this and went hunting on the government project delivery website. And there it was, a draft set of project data standards, and I had a good chat with Simon, and we reached out to, as I say, was then the IPA, to understand a little bit more about the project data standards, what the aims were, and just understand the core complexities around what they were looking to achieve, the outcomes they were looking to achieve by implementing them. And then Simon and I went away, understood how that could be replicated, or how Verto could support that, and started against those draft standards that were published on the gov.uk website and the government project delivery website. We started playing around, for want of a better expression, with Verto and seeing what that looks like in real life in our system.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of music to our ears, really, wasn't it? Certainly something that we look to enforce and help our clients with all the time is that standard approach. So this really sung to our tune. But could you tell me a little bit about what were the government project delivery? What were they trying to solve when they began developing these functional standards?
So yeah, the way it was described to myself was, in short, they're looking to drive consistent data language across government. So not only are government departments reporting on projects in the same way, they're also being cross-trained, cross-departmental as well. So if a member of the civil service was to move from one department to the other, the terminology, the language, the ways of doing things is very similar, and the guidance and the framework they're working towards is similar, if not the same as well. Ultimately, allowing that across government will improve the quality, accuracy, and comparability. Try and saying that 3 times fast. The project data across the government portfolio. Ultimately, that will lead to more trusted management information, more trusted data, to allow that data to drive insight and allow decisions to be made faster and smarter, in essence.
Yeah.
And I suppose that the whole, we mentioned GovS002 and that sort of thing, but it's sort of to give the guidance and the embedded practice in day-to-day working as you're working on your project data, and how that is relaying back to the guidance and the capability frameworks embedded within that standard as well.
Yeah. You mentioned GovS002 there. Could you, in simple terms, what are the functional standards? Why were they introduced across central government? Could you just sort of clarify the different sections of what people need to take note of?
Yeah, sure. So by its very nature, GovS002 suggests there's at least 2 functional standards across government. To my knowledge, the last time I checked, there was around 14 government functional standards, all varying in their different areas of expertise, such as finance, etc. But GovS002, in short, is the government functional standard for project delivery. In terms of what it does, it sets out the minimum expectations for how projects, programs, and portfolios should be governed and managed across central government. It covers all the areas you'd expect to see: planning, approvals, risk assurance, controls, benefits, and ultimately the accountability of the delivery of the project. It is, as I say, the functional standard, and it applies to every level of UK central government, from, as I say, ministerial, non-departmentals, executive agencies, and down to arm's length bodies as well. The main driver behind it, I suppose, is to, as I've already mentioned, create that consistent way of delivering change across government, and to help reduce project failure, and improve the oversight of the public money being used to to deliver the outcomes the projects are there to change. And ultimately, as we've already mentioned, help embed best practice across all departments and try and unify and drive that consistency of best practice rather than each organisation doing things differently. It's in essence, it was introduced in short to improve consistency, control, and achieve successful delivery of portfolios across government.
Yeah, standardise that approach. Yeah. Simon, I'm going to come to you next. At what point did it become clear that for us translating these standards into something operational would be just as important as publishing them? How did that thinking develop? Could you give us a bit of background on what we've done and everything?
Yeah, I think sort of prior to having these standards, it's something that we've talked to our customers a lot about. They're all after the same sort of thing. They come to us because they want the same sort of purpose as us. They want ways of running their projects better. They want consistency. They want consistent, reliable information, but they don't want it to be like, over the top, undue bureaucracy and sort of difficult to do. And it's something that we've always battled with, is trying to get the balance right on that. So how many fields should you have against a risk? Should we just use the risk that our old risk system had, or the spreadsheet that we've had knocking around for ages has? What kind of stuff are we actually there to do? And a lot of the start of our work with our clients is, okay, we know you want to put the projects, you want to centralize them, you want to do this work better, but what does that even look like? And often they don't know, or they've got some idea and then they spend months trying to figure it out. And even when they've figured it out, then, it changes, and it's taken all that work away. I think we've got this minimum standard that's straight away, well, yeah, obviously, let's go with what the recommendation is. That's our platform to build on. So it speeds up that whole process of just saying, well, let's start with the government standards. If you want to build on top of it and have extra fields, absolutely. But let's, as Pete was saying, if we've got this consistency across all the departments, and, it's well tried and tested, it's well thought through, it's a great place to start. So for us, it aligns really well with what we're doing already. And it just sort of turbocharges those initial conversations of saying, well, here's where we start, and then we can put extra process in and build around it if we want to. So it's I think operationalizing it's just, how do you go from yes, we want to do that, to actually doing it? And that's where having a system can help, because you just log in, it's there, and then you get going. So that's really helped us.
And so what do these standards aim to achieve beyond compliance? What changes when organizations genuinely align to them? It's going to come up a few times, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the main question, isn't it? And I think there's a key phrase that I've used before, which this standard, I've written it down. I'm obviously reading this. I can't just trot it out, but it changes the unit of management from documents to data. So the key thing about that, and that's something that we've been doing the whole time we've been in business, essentially, it's saying, well, yes, if you're running a project properly, you will have risk logs and issue logs and all these sorts of documents everywhere. But are you producing good quality data and using that to make good decisions and all those other things that you want that data to do? So for me, it shouldn't just be about compliance and saying, oh, here's another thing, we've got a tick box exercise. It's like the whole point of these standards and good project management in general is making sure, as Pete said, that you're running the projects as well as possible, you're being as effective as you can with public money, and that's what all this is actually able to do. So we've used the word consistency a lot, because that is essentially what we're doing here. But running projects in a consistent way makes them comparable. You get more experienced. You can really put that stuff together, and it helps. And it also allows you to move from different departments and do things in similar ways, even across teams and all sorts of stuff. You can do that. I think the quality of decision making goes a lot better when you've got good data. So again, that's what the point of this data is. It's not I'm filling it in because someone somewhere needs a report to say I'm doing it. It's like, let's look at what we're actually generating and use that to make good decisions as we go. I think assurance is a really key part of this, which is I can show you exactly what I'm recording, how I'm recording it. Everything's auditable. I'm doing things properly. It's not a kind of seat of your pants and everyone's doing it a bit differently. And a project over here might work really well because they're really experienced, but this one over here might not. And when there's millions of pounds at stake, you want to be doing everything as well as you can. And then
And
I think,
confidence is key as well, isn't it?
yeah,
Have
absolutely it is.
confidence
And
in
if
your
people,
data.
yeah, and the confidence comes from everybody doing it in a comparable way, being well trained on it, understanding why they're doing things. So it's not just sort of, everyone for themselves trying to make it work. So what tends to happen before you've got a system and standards like this is everyone's kind of defining their own way of doing it. So different ways of doing progress and risks and benefits, and there's no shared language, there's no shared governance, there's no sort of comparable thing. So you get a massive difference between some teams that are really like great and up and running and depends on their levels of experience, and other ones that are not as good. But what this can do is just bring everything together and lay that platform, to put it all together properly. So again, the analytics of that can help as well, because you could compare all your different teams together, the different projects, work out how you can learn lessons across all of it. So it's getting away from disparate documents, disparate systems, and teams working in silos in different ways, and going, well, look, here's the data you should be recording, here's the process you should be running to make the projects work as well as you can, and you're building on that all the time. So it's a recipe to do things better. It's not just a compliance exercise or a tick box exercise as we see it. So
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. What was important in ensuring this wasn't just about branding or alignment on paper, but actually about genuinely supporting consistency and clarity in delivery?
I think what's important is just it's the message behind it, I think, which is again part of what we're here to do today, is just say, look, these standards are really useful. They'll be really helpful in establishing better project management and better results. And yeah, it's not a branding thing. It's just, there a lot of work's been put into these, and all the work we've done over the years and sort of trying to get that message out about standardization and bringing things together. I think the reason we're so keen on all this is it aligns perfectly with our mission, which is, centralize your data, record things properly, have standards that everyone can align to, everyone's trained on and knows what's there. And you've got all those extra governance elements. We talked about GovSRO2, but there's loads of sort of books and stuff around that, which, help people come along. And I think one of the biggest things that we found in our journey of all these years of implementing, project management systems into government is that sadly one of the most consistent things is that not everyone is really well trained. They're new to the organization, they haven't necessarily had all of this, but they're suddenly put in a position of like, manage that project, you'll be fine. It's not everyone, but there is a pool of those sorts of people, and these standards and the governments and the help around them will really help bring everybody up to the same level. You could everything they need to know is available. It's all published. It's all, as I said before, it's been really thought through, and it's really strong. So actually having that in play, it just makes everybody better and the work better if it's followed. So it shouldn't be seen as a sort of compliance exercise or box tick, and it should be, okay, here's how we drive our standards to the next level. We bring all the people up, because ultimately project management is people. As much as I love AI and all the things around it, you still need people making the decisions, doing the work, figuring out what needs to happen, communicating. And the more we can empower those people to make good decisions, have data to help those good decisions, and the training around it, the whole thing's just gonna work better. So, to me, that's what's important, really, beyond just here's something else we need to think about, or here's something else that's difficult. It's like there's a genuine drive to make everything better, and it's something that we really believe in.
Yeah, and I think that you raise a really interesting point there about a pool of people that aren't necessarily trained, and bringing up to these standards, allowing everybody to sit at the same level and know as much as each other. We coined a term. We're trying to coin a term up with the accidental project manager, which we've spoken about internally for years. And I did a webinar on it, I think, at the beginning of the year, and just seeing that, just allowing that group of people to be seen and understood, and not penalized for not knowing less. But like you said, these standards really are an opportunity for those people to feel confident and to get on that same level.
It's a support, ultimately, isn't it?
Support.
For accidental project manager, it's just, I guess our thought is just someone that's ended up there. It doesn't mean they're not really good at what they do, but they perhaps haven't gone through all of the rigorous standards of training and days of Prince2 and Agile and all that sort of stuff. They're in there doing the job, and they're often doing a really great job. But it's just, how do we make sure that everyone's doing it in a comparable way, and bring the standards together and have that consistency? So yeah, I think it just pulls all of that stuff together for us. So yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. So my next question: when you first looked at the functional standards, what were the biggest challenges in translating what is quite policy-led language into something usable day to day? I don't know who wants to answer that one. Pete, maybe.
Yeah, I'll start. I'm sure Simon will have pieces to add to this. So, and to be fair, a lot of this has already been discussed as well. So, we mentioned earlier that the government functional standards and the program and project data standards are there to drive consistency of data, to help inform decision making, and ultimately the reporting of that data. And how do you translate that to as you've asked, Laura, being usable day to day? Now, there's various ways of doing that, but our key driver is, if we were putting this into Verto, we didn't want it to become a end of the month, to coin Simon's phrase, tick box exercise, where everybody logs in the final 2 days of the month, updates the data as they've got recorded on their spreadsheets, their various Word documents, various pieces of data across disparate systems stored in various areas. So what we did is we got our heads together and we looked at, okay, what's the easiest way for this to flow? And what we tried to do in the version that we've got within Verto is translate all the project data standard information to be as accessible as possible, so that when you're an accidental project manager and you're asked to update a field on a risk log, and you want to ensure the data is consistent with the project and program data standards and aligned to the information that needs to be recorded, you may not update that information every day. It might be a week, it might be a couple of weeks in between those updates. And if you're working from a spreadsheet, you've then got to go away to somewhere to look at maybe the government project delivery website, maybe some guidance from the Teal book, maybe your own organization's delivery framework that's aligned to government project delivery. And that can take time, and a lot of people are stretched. Time is a resource is stretched. So rather than do that, what we try to do is give people that time back by making the information accessible as possible. So everything within Verto is within a click of a button, to give you the guidance and the definition from the project and program data standards. What is the risk mitigation clause? What information is required here? What character count is it, etc. And if it does link to other areas, whether it be GovS 002, whether it be the Teal book, there's references to the Orange book and various rainbow books within the program and project data standards. It's there within the click of a button, so it drives accountability and it drives enablement from Verto. And that ultimately allows that to then become embedded within the person, so that they may have to start checking it every time they make an update to a field to ensure it aligns. But then as time goes on, the enablement, the capability, the maturity of that accidental project manager grows, and all of a sudden they're not having to do that, because they know it, they've learned it, they know it's there if they need it, it's there as a reference point. But it's now the project manager is the enabler and the person doing the data updates, as opposed to having the enablement from the project and program data standards. And that's ultimately what we wanted to do. We wanted to make sure that we make it as collaborative as possible, and it doesn't just become that end of month tick box exercise, which it could potentially do.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right there, Pete. And I think that's one of the cool things about this whole thing being published. I know we talk about the books, but they're all online, and you can link to the specific reference point. So if you're in the middle of, you've got a field, you've got that blinking cursor going, what should I do here? That's where your click is. You don't have to go off and read or check it all out. So you can be pointed to all that stuff. So that's been a really good thing for us to do. So the ability to just have help at every single field makes that possible. So yeah, we've learned a lot about the different rainbow books and all those different bits of content, but yeah, it's all referenceable quickly, and I think that helps. So yeah. And I'll just say as well, we talked a lot about accidental project managers, but this is also for all project managers and anyone else who's, super experienced. They might be used to doing project management in a different way, and suddenly they're, they have to adapt a little bit to this because that's coming in, and that's how their organization needs to work. So there's sometimes adaptation to be done. So even if you are super experienced and you know all of it, this might be different. You're used to doing risks in a certain way, and now the standards are saying, well, this is, how you need to be doing it now. So the guidance is there for everybody. I think that's it brings up the people that are less experienced, and it also helps those that are super experienced and everyone in between.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Were there areas where the practical exercise of building this out surfaced any ambiguities or raised any new questions?
Interesting question. So I don't want to go technical on this, but essentially what we did was we've got an out-of-the-box version of Verto, which is sort of fully featured PPM system. And we thought, well, let's just, instead of like trying to adapt that, our initial thought actually was, let's adapt that to the standard and see what it looks like. And then we thought, do you know what, it's going to be easier just to strip it all out and start from scratch and just like, let's build up the standard into a system and see what it looks like. And
As a
then
standalone, you mean?
Yeah, but just in terms of fields as well, just purely like, let's only have the fields that are in the standard and see what we feel might be missing, see what you might need to put together, to make it a cohesive system. So what we're trying to do there is blend the knowledge that we've built up over years of doing this with all our clients and all the individual builds we have with all of them. And, how does that actually gel with the standards and what needs to be there? And what we ended up doing was adding in a fair few extra bits just for, that we would put in as a, a nice to have, I suppose. It's not absolutely mandatory or featured in the standards as they're published, but, if we were going to push Verto out there, we'd stick that in as well, so just sort of extra elements around RAID and other stuff around maybe stakeholders and things like that were like, yeah, if we were going to sort of list out all the functionality we'd want in the system, these are the things that would be there. It's not to say that, they won't be part of the standards in future or there's more thinking going on with those and stuff. It's just like as they were published back in December, there was a couple of things we thought, let's put that in and make it work. So what we're trying to do, as I say, is blend system knowledge and all the sort of implementations we've done and all the personalization we've done across all these government organizations with this standard and hopefully find this happy medium. So it's a key thing when we're actually putting Verto in, is just to say, because you can have thousands of fields doesn't mean you should, let's not overcomplicate it. Let's put things in that genuinely help people, but not go too far the other way as well. So we've got that blend, right, of, there's enough data to do good work, but not so much that you're just overawed and thinking, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. It's key, again, that the people that you're training and the people you're expecting to use it understand what it's for, and they get it all. They're not overawed at any point. So that was kind of, it was interesting in that particular thing, and we did go back and forth a little bit saying, should we do this, should we not do this? But what we have as the kind of new out of the box data standards compliant version is every single thing that's in the data standards is there, but then there's some nice to have layered on top. So that's what we've got.
Right. Good to know. Good to know. Okay, Pete, back to you just briefly. Pete, I was wondering if you could outline the first steps busy government departments need to take in order to get compliant, but without going too complex, which I'm sure many out there might be fearing right now.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So, in short, come and speak to myself or one of our central government team here at Verto. We can happily talk to you around your current situation, where you're looking to get to, and as you will have seen from hopefully from today's webinar, Verto is ready to go out of the box for organisations that are struggling with this. Without making this a complete webinar and a sales pitch, genuinely look at the guidance that is out there. Speak to your heads of project profession or your centre for excellences within your organisations. Hopefully understand a little bit more about what's going on from a central department organisation, and then you have got the government project delivery team that are on hand to support any questions. I know they're pretty quick at coming back via email, and I'm sure they're welcome to any questions and calls to be scheduled on behalf of that. Don't fear it, embrace it is probably the biggest thing here, in that we organisations have got time to make sure they get this right. There's a lot to talk about. It's not just changing fields on a spreadsheet or implementing a new tool. It's the change management that comes with that, the business change, the organisation change, and make sure you map that out. Don't do everything at once, and use the expertise in your organisation or from external partners to understand what that looks like for your organisation, because every project delivery function across government is different. Every organisation have got their own nuances. But if government comes together and drives this change and creates that consistency of data, it's the UK government, the civil service, and the country that is going to benefit from better insight into their portfolios, the understanding their current situation, and ultimately driving the real benefits that the projects are there to deliver, so they can be realised and learnt from, ready for next time.
Mm-hmm. Good answer. That sounds great. Yeah. Now, I would like to welcome Ben Salisbury to the webinar. I'll just toggle you on, Ben, so you can be heard. Ben is a lead business analyst within government project delivery, and it is really lovely to have you here, Ben. Welcome. Oh, if you unmute yourself, there we go, perfect.
Sorry, I thought you toggled me on. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me.
Ben, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. Firstly, when departments get this right, what does good look like in practice? What would you expect to change when programmes are managed, governed and reported?
So I think what good looks like is that any member of a project team or programme team, when their organisation has got this right, is empowered to create project data in a way that is consistent with the expectations set out by the standard. So it doesn't become difficult for them. It's just naturally part of the facilities they have available to them. So that means that any of their guidance, for instance, their processes, their management information, it all looks and feels consistent with the way that the standard describes. And the second part of your question, I think it was governed and reported. That already happens. Programs, projects are governed and reporting occurs, of course. But when an organisation picks up the standard, when they work towards compliance with it, the look and feel of that governance and of the management information in those reports should improve. It should look more consistent. It should be predictable, and the insights that you can draw from it should also then look and feel more reliable and more consistent. Yeah,
lovely, and just that added bit of reassurance on that sounds like a positive step. My second question is for you. For departments beginning to prepare their plans for the end of 2026, what advice would you give them to approach this in a practical and achievable way?
So the first piece of advice I'd give is begin with the publicly available advice on our website on projectdelivery.gov.uk. On there you'll find a policy note that sets out the expectations, and that should be your first port of call for reassurance of what it is you're actually asked to achieve. And it also talks about the timeline up to 2030. So no one should feel that they're necessarily late or behind on this. This is a hard thing to be doing, and we're here to support you with it. You'll also find on there the guide to adopting the Programme Project Data Standard Handbook. Now that sets out in detail, I hope, some of the steps that organisations can take to begin planning for and then working towards compliance. And in essence, it takes you through an as-is assessment of your organisation's current data environment, then looking at your organisation's data model. So what are the programme project data needs of your organisation? Then assessing those relative to what the standard sets out and asks for, and then sort of takes you through a gap analysis And if you go through those steps out in that handbook, that should stand you in good stead to be working towards compliance from January 2027.
That sounds really useful. Yeah. Thank you so much for running us through that. Right, so that brings us to the end of the interview style questions, and hope all of that has been useful for everybody watching today. Now we're going to head into the Q&A now. Before we do, I am just going to launch a quick poll. If I can do this now. We are just interested in finding out, launch this. We're just interested in finding out how you heard about this webinar today. We did a little bit of extra promotion to try and get this out, knowing how important this topic was. And it really helps us with effective promotion moving forward, because we've got lots going on, lots in the pipeline. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a few seconds here, I hope that's launched for everybody. Looks like it has. That's lovely. Thank you so much for your responses. And I won't keep that on for any longer. We can now move into the Q&A. So let me have a look and see if we've got any questions. That's just loading up now. We do have one question. I'll just toggle off the slides so you can see us all a little bit better there. Jackie, thank you for your question. Jackie asks, is there a set assessment tool template for everyone to complete, or do we make our own based on the mandatory standards? Ben, I might come to you for that one, because I feel like you've just sort of answered that. This might have come a little while ago with the guidance that you've got on the Government Project Delivery website. Would that be the best place?
It depends on your context, Jackie, as in if you were from one of the in-scope organisations, because if you're not from one of the in-scope organisations, those being central ministerial departments and their ALBs, then I don't think there will be any expectation for any assessment, not from Government Project Delivery or NISTA. So it sort of depends on your context. So I wouldn't want to say, oh, this is how there will be an assessment if there isn't one for you. So if you want to give it a little bit more context, I might be able to advise you a bit more.
That would be great. If you've got time, Jackie, that would be wonderful. In terms of if Jackie came to one of us at Verto, what would be something that we could, we mentioned a gap analysis. I think one of you mentioned that at some point, but
yeah, we've actually had this with a couple of our existing clients as well, who've come to us and said, we just want to see how compliant we are as it stands, so we know what the standards are. We've already got a Verto build with all of the fields in there. So can you do a gap analysis for us and make sure that we are compliant? And if there's any fields missing from the standards, what do they need to be? So that's a piece of work that we're helping with them. There's not a set tool for it that we've got. It's fairly manual, but it's well worth doing. What we've found so far is that people are compliant. They've especially because some of our bigger government departments have been doing this for a while, and they've got huge builds, so there's not much they're missing. But yeah, there's always the odd field and that kind of thing. So it's the good thing is the messages have got to them. They are reaching out. They're trying to make sure that they're as compliant as possible, as early as possible. So yeah, we're starting that process now. We are trying to come up with some clever way of clicking a button and have AI go, here's all the fields you've got, and here's all the ones in the standards, and that's what's missing. But the problem we have is it's a technical one with Verto. You can rename any field to anything, so it does create its challenges. But it's something that we're working towards to better support organisations. So it's easier if you've already got a system, obviously, but it's harder if they say, well, here's all of our templates across 20 different docs. How close are we to the standard? Then that's going to take some auditing, but it's just a process of working through it, I think. And that process can be quite a useful thing to run through. Say, well, what value is this doc giving you? What reporting are you doing on this information? Is it helpful? How would you want to pull all that together? So it's sort of casting a light on existing processes and trying to look for what might be a better to be process rather than just sticking with the as is. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but it's, I'm offering it in answer, so we'll see.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you for that. So there are a couple of questions that have come our way, certainly from a Verto side, that might be useful just to bring up here. Is the out of the box solution fixed to the standard, or can it be adapted to reflect how different departments actually work? Again, Simon, I think that's probably a you question.
It's probably a me question. Nothing's fixed. We have the ability to actually lock it down so you can't remove a field that is in the standard, which is something we've been asked to do. So people can't accidentally become non-compliant just by fiddling and tweaking with it. We've always had a thing where the client's in control of their builds and they can do whatever, but what they're kind of coming to us for in this regard is to say, well, we want to make sure that we are, compliant and it can be audited and all of that. So I think our general line on it is you can add to the standard, but it's better not to take it away because then you'll lose that. But in terms of the pure data capture, all that's there, and you can add as much other stuff as you want. And yeah, different teams can have different amounts of fields and run it in different ways. And then there's all sorts of differences with process as well. So I think the short answer is you can do what you want, but it's a good idea not to remove those things that it's helping you with, But generally, as we've seen, is most of our clients have more than the standard is what they're actually capturing so far, which is good. But again, I think a lot of the time the standard isn't necessarily aimed initially at those clients that have already got a process in place, they've already got a PPM system, they've already put a lot of thought and time into getting all that stuff there. I think it's good that they can double check that they're capturing all those data fields. But I think it's really, really useful for those that haven't quite got to that level yet, where they're still using lots of different tools and spreadsheets and different pockets of different things in other places. And it's something that I talked to Ben about early on, that it's all tool agnostic. If you're doing it and capturing it all in the right way, that's fine. But it makes it a little bit harder if you've got it spread out all over the place. So we're figuring that stuff out.
Yeah, understand. Another question that comes our way a little often is, does aligning to the standards mean that we're just doing the minimum required, or are there additional capabilities that help us go beyond compliance?
Like I keep talking, who wants to take that?
I know,
one?
I'm sorry, Simon. I think that's a you one as well.
That's a me one as well. Yeah, I mean, it's the same answer. We've said that a couple of times, that you can build more in as you want to, and you can go as far as you want to with things like benefits analysis and performance tracking and all those sorts of things. So yeah, there's more you can do. But I think that the key is to sort of have that root and branch review and just say, look, are we capturing the right data that meets these standards? Are we doing the right things with that data? Are we capturing it just for capturing its sake, or are we actually running reports on it? Are we clarifying the data, or are we making decisions in real time? Because that's one of the things that we want to try and do with all of this, is not just sort of look back and see how you failed. If it does, it's like fix it in real time and use the data for that. So we're moving from like reporting what happened to like managing from trusted data. That's the kind of shift that we're always trying to achieve here. And I think when you've got the good data that Ben and his colleagues have said to put together, it will help you do that. So I think that's kind of the key. It's a mind shift as much as just data. I don't want people to see this, and I'm sure colleagues would agree with me. It's not just about, okay, here's some data, record the data, tick, done. It's what are you using that for? How is it helping you? And that's the key. So there's an education piece around the reasons and what you can do with it and why good data helps you run projects better, and that's the key thing. And we bring it back to the core point here is we want to make sure these projects are effective, the money spent wisely, and we're realizing that there's as many benefits as we can for these projects. And the better data you've got, and the more consistent data you've got, the better decisions will happen. And yeah, you can fix problems in real time, because nothing's going to run perfectly all the time, but having good risk data and issue data and all that sort of stuff just helps you make decisions and fix things.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a question in from Dash at DEFRA. Dash says, in DEFRA we have varying levels of PPM maturity. Is it possible to have a few different templates, a basic one for basic users who are running simple projects, and more advanced templates for more complex projects, building the standards into these two?
I'll start with that one to give you a break if you want, Simon.
Thanks, Pete.
So Dash, the short answer is yes. So many of our central government clients will be running very complex programs and projects similar or aligned with the government major projects portfolio, or major projects within their own organisation that have very strict governance and very defined projects and program life cycles. And those are managed in a very different way within Verto to those that are perhaps minor projects in terms of importance or size and scale. And they can follow a similar but different project life cycle that may have less data recorded against it. It may have slightly, sorry Simon for saying this, probably the wrong terminology, but slightly more relaxed governance to allow it to move through different stage gates of the project life cycle. So all of the data within the standards, if it's mandatory data that has to be recorded, we will absolutely keep it there. But if there's data that's specific to the organization's own reporting processes for their major projects, then we can take that out, or even go as far as, without going too complex, using something in the tool called input templates, where it's right, I'm doing a business case for a minor project. Here's the information that I need to record in order to submit that business case for approval. So there's various ways of doing it within the platform, but yes is the short answer.
Mm-hmm.
I think, just to add to that, I think one of the key tenets of project management for me is making sure it's the right level for the work you're doing. So yes, you can build a process that will run your most complicated project, spending the most money, the highest amount of governance, but there's still plenty of other stuff you have to do that you just want to get done quicker and right, and you don't need to throw the same amount of governance at it. And the kind of one size fits all just doesn't really work anymore. So having different pathways for the different sizes of projects can work. So again, we're meeting the minimum standards, but you can lower the amount of governance and still run a good project and still get things done faster and easier and all of that sort of stuff. So, and in terms of maturity, one of the things that we do is a sort of maturity assessment for different teams at the start, and then we put you on a journey of building up your maturity. And we've kind of hinted at that throughout this webinar, haven't we, that these standards will actually drive maturity up. We're saying it will make project managers better, but I guess we do mean like the project maturity within an organization, of everyone understanding what the terms mean, what the reporting is about, how everybody contributes to it, and all that kind of stuff. And that is just, that maturity journey is a really key thing to be on. Just make sure you're moving forward with it, and setting some goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Right, there are no more questions at the moment. So I think what we'll be able to do is give you all just a few minutes back, which is always a good thing to do. So let's conclude there. I want to thank the panel, especially you, Ben, who have joined us as our guest speaker from Government Project Delivery today. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you all for attending. If anybody has any further questions that you didn't manage to sneak into the Q&A, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask. Please also look out for an email coming to you in the next few days with the recording of today's session. And other than that, I do hope you'll join us again for another webinar. Our next one is actually only in a couple of weeks, on May the 12th, called Closing the Visibility Gap, and it's about data aggregation. So we hope to see you there. But for today, thank you all very much for joining, and we'll hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Bye.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.